Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment. We'll give folks a chance to join the call. Thank you for joining us today. We'll give folks just a couple of minutes to join, and then we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. I'm grateful to have you all here today. I'm just waiting for folks to join. Great. Hello, Chris. Welcome. Do you like to say hello and kick us off today? Oh, you're muted, sorry.
Hey, all right, so here we are. I want to introduce my team, which is the technical and heart and excellent core of IREC and our partner in this webinar to share what we know about the trends, the look ahead, the baseline for workforce in clean energy. And of course, we're joined today, IREC is pleased to be joined today by a number of partners who also have different angles and different methodologies for counting clean energy workforce in the United States. We want to recognize all of our partners and their excellence and expertise as well. This webinar is to provide a broad background of what we believe is the most accurate and certainly long-standing register of clean energy workers, workforce industry trends in the United States. This marks IREC's 15th year of providing the solar census. And we could not be more proud than we are to offer this to you today. Pagan Pojani is our Vice President of Workforce at IREC, and she will be leading this webinar for IREC. But we do want to recognize and welcome our partners, and I'm going to let Pagan kick that off, introduce the full webinar. I'm just going to enjoy it with everybody else on this call. But I do give you this gift. It is the season of giving. Please support your excellence, support this important effort, both from IREC and from our partners. If you are in a position to comment favorably on this in your social media, please do that. If you're in a position to use these data in your own reporting, in your own analysis, your commentary, please do that. We make this available to everyone on this webinar and generally the public. This is a public resource that we're proud to provide, and our partners are also proud to provide. So vote with your usage, give us that support, and continue to work for good workforce and workforce competence in the United States for all of our clean energy industry partners. All right, Pagan, please take it away. And I'm going to silence myself and take myself off mute.
Thanks so much, Chris. I'm glad that you could join us. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. As Chris mentioned, my name is Pagan Pojani, and I'm the Vice President of our workforce programming here at the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, or IREC, and truly grateful to have you here today. This webinar is supported by the Bank of America, and our focus, as Chris mentioned, is Clean Energy Workforce Insights Baseline Findings from the 2024 Solar Jobs Census. So we're going to share what the latest census data tells us about solar and solar plus storage employment, what's changing, what's holding steady, and maybe what that means for workforce strategy going into 2026. So the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, if you're not familiar with our work, is a national nonprofit. We work to accelerate the growth of clean energy and energy efficiency for everyone so that the benefits reach people, communities, and the economy, and of course support our planet as well. Here at IREC, we do that through three core areas. Our regulatory team helps support and create policies and market conditions for clean energy to scale. Our local initiatives programming supports local governments and local communities adopt resilient energy solutions. And on the workforce development team, this is where we build connections among job seekers, students, employers, education providers, and community-based organizations and the broader workforce ecosystem. And across all of this work, we provide technical assistance to advance innovative workforce and local community solutions. We also award nationally recognized credentials to clean energy training programs and trainers. We produce the Solar Jobs Census, and we convene efforts like the National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance. So a few webinar logistics before we get started. Some housekeeping notes. Closed captioning is available if that's your preference. Please select show caption from the controls at the bottom of your screen if you'd like to enable that. All of our participants are on mute, but we do encourage you to use the Q&A feature to submit any questions that you might have at any point. For panelists, we'll leave time for questions and discussion at the end. I also want to note that IREC does not allow AI note takers or chatbots to participate in our webinars, so any that have joined or that do join will be removed. We are recording this webinar, and we will be sharing the recording and a copy of the slides and any additional follow-up resources after the webinar. I would love for you to use the chat feature to introduce yourself and let folks know where you're from and what type of work you do and what your interest is in being here today. So today's agenda, quick overview of what we're going to cover. We're going to start with a brief introduction to the National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance, including some of our planning for 2026. We will then move into our feature presentation, which is focused on our National Solar Jobs Census. And then after that, we're going to hear Alliance member updates from World Resources Institute, Inclusive Economics, and BW Research, and they'll be highlighting how data analysis are being used to inform clean energy workforce strategy. And then we'll wrap up with some questions and next steps for staying engaged. So this slide shows the National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance, and I'm really, truly grateful and deeply appreciative for the funding from the Bank of America that supports the Alliance, which functions as a connected ecosystem rather than a single program. The Alliance is designed to bring together employers, workforce and education partners, training providers, researchers, funders, and policymakers, all working across clean energy and energy efficiency. And our goal is to create shared space for coordination, learning, and action, a place where data, tools, and on-the-ground experience inform one another. And through the Alliance, we focus on elevating best practices, filling gaps in workforce systems, and supporting all of our members and participating organizations with practical resources that help connect people to high-quality clean energy careers. And everything that you see here today, from the data that we're sharing to the tools and platforms and resources that we've produced, is grounded in this kind of ecosystem approach and in the idea that workforce challenges are best solved collaboratively. So 2026 National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance Planning. This is our last of our Alliance activities for 2025. We are planning to continue our webinar series in 2026. That's the first in kind of our 3 potential engagement channels. So webinars including feature presentations co-created by Alliance members, member updates, practical tools that you can use right away, like best practices, tools and templates, checklists, or infographics. Second is an expansion of some of the regional convenings that we have done, building on some efforts that we did in the Northeast last year. This year, we're focused on the Midwest. And then third is networking and collaboration opportunities for peer-to-peer learning, office hours, or roundtable discussions, ways that we can stay connected with each other between webinars and conference opportunities. And with that, I would really love to get some input. On the next slide, we're going to do a quick poll because we would like to get a sense of which of these types of activities are most valuable to you. And thank you, Michelle has launched the poll for us. So we'll leave this up for just a moment. Love to see where you feel like your time is best spent engaging in workforce activities in 2026. And if you have other more detailed comments or ideas, would love to hear those in the chat. We'll just let folks click on the buttons to respond to the poll questions. Give folks at least 1 minute. Most folks have participated. Any last minute stragglers? Michelle, if you could share the results. I think folks can see these. Looks like pretty even split between practical webinars with tools and templates and regional or in-person convenings, and no one interested only in peer learning office hours or roundtable conversations, but a good 50% of folks chose a mix of all 3. So thank you so much for joining us for that activity. So I also want to highlight Green Workforce Connect just briefly, or GWC as folks refer to it, because everything in this space needs to have an acronym. Green Workforce Connect is IREC's national workforce platform designed to connect job seekers, employers, training providers, and also contractors. We host workforce development resources, tools, and templates, and it's built to really function as a practical hub for both career exploration and also for developing a highly trained energy workforce. In terms of what you can find there today, Green Workforce Connect includes ready-to-use recruitment and outreach resources. We've got sample language, social media content, and templates to help you communicate more effectively and reach job seekers and students. It also supports stronger connections to talent through career pathways content and career exploration opportunities. We've also got occupational profiles for clean energy and energy efficiency occupations. And we're also expanding our career exploration resources, including a major update coming to our very popular career maps and a new Exploring Registered Apprenticeships in Clean Energy course, building on our Exploring Solar Careers course. And we'll be adding even more in 2026, including additional content focused on registered apprenticeship pathways, supporting employers. And then on the employer and contractor side, Green Workforce Connect also includes a lot of business development tools and templates. And finally, you can discover a national training directory through our Connect Now maps. And we are also expanding our geographic coverage and focus in Green Workforce Connect. At the beginning of January 2024, so almost 2 years ago, when we launched Green Workforce Connect, we were working in a coordinated manner in 3 states, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And we have since expanded to cover all of the dark blue, or I don't know what, dark greenish blue color that you see there. And we are actively working on creating pages for Oregon, Kansas, Texas, Ohio, and Puerto Rico. And really excited about this continuing expanded coverage in Green Workforce Connect. And if you are familiar with Green Workforce Connect, you can go to the Spotlights Where You Live drop-down menu at the top. And if you're not familiar with Green Workforce Connect, I encourage you to visit greenworkforceconnect.org and take a look at all of the different resources and opportunities that we have there to help support the clean energy and energy efficiency workforce. And with that, I think I'm going to ask for Michelle to launch a second poll because now that we've heard a little bit about the types of engagements you'd like this coming year, we would also like to learn a little bit more about what types of resources and topics that you would like us to focus on or expand next year. So please respond to this poll question, which asks about topics we should prioritize when creating new resources. And your feedback is going to directly inform future tools, templates, and guidance that we develop both through our National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance initiative and through Green Workforce Connect. I'll give you a moment to read those different options there and make your responses. All right. Had 100% response rate. Michelle, I think we're ready to have those results shared. So high as 50% of folks, career pathways, training, and credentialing. We have heard you, and we will definitely take that to heart. And then next up, equity-centered workforce strategies and inclusive practices. And then kind of an even split there between the other 3 options. So thank you so much. We really appreciate your input and feedback as we are planning for the coming year. And with that, I think I'm going to pass it over to Gwen Brown for the next piece of this, which is our feature presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pagan. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here with you today. I'm IREC's Vice President of Communications, and I worked closely with Pagan and a number of our other colleagues on developing the Solar Jobs Census this year. And I would love to just dive right in and share some of the updates. Pagan, do you mind going to the next slide? So as many of you are probably aware, the Solar Jobs Census provides an annual count of U.S. solar and solar plus storage jobs. And it's been published every year since 2010, most recently by IREC, and before that by the Solar Foundation, which merged with IREC in 2021. And this gives us one of the longest running and most consistent clean energy workforce data sets in the country. As we'll talk about shortly, the census includes national job totals, but it also includes data for each of our 50 states and every major segment of the value chain. And it also looks at both solar only and solar plus storage workers. It's relied on by policymakers, industry leaders, and workforce practitioners in policy conversations around the country and making informed decisions about the workforce. And one of the things that makes it really valuable is its consistency. It gives us a baseline to track trends and understand what's happening in the industry. And we'll dig into that shortly. Megan, can you jump to the next slide? Before we jump in to the findings, I just want to take a brief moment to recognize some of the organizations that helped make the 2024 Solar Jobs Census possible. Our lead sponsor was the Solar Energy Industries Association, or SEIA, and we're deeply appreciative of their anchor funding. And we're also grateful to our additional sponsors, which include EDP Renewables, the California Energy Commission, Solve Energy, Reactivate, McCarthy Building Companies, CM3, Synergy, Select Energy, and Boviet Solar. And this report exists because these organizations recognize that strong workforce data is foundational to our industry's long-term success. And these sponsorships are really critical because producing the census goes far beyond just the data collection. And their support helps with interactive charts, careful interpretation of the findings, and the narratives that help make the information accessible. So big thank you to these organizations. Next slide. So one last thing I'll cover before we jump into the data is a quick overview of how some of this information is collected. The survey that this report is based on was administered by BW Research, who is also on today's call, and is part of the U.S. Department of Energy's 2025 U.S. Energy and Employment Report. It reached more than 42,000 energy firms nationwide and got full responses from nearly 11,000 firms. Data collection happened between October 2024 and February 2025 and was collected by both phone and email outreach. The margin of error is just under 1%, which is extremely strong for a survey of this scale. And one methodological note that I'll flag, which is a little bit different from how a few other reports cover this, is we define a solar worker as someone who spends the majority of their time on solar-related work. But we do also include a tally of workers who spend a plurality of their time on solar. Next slide. So first, I want to start with some of the top line findings from the 2024 census. Depending on how you count it, there were about 280,000 workers spending the majority of their time on solar. And if you expand that to workers spending at least part of their time on solar, that's 370,000 workers, over 370,000 workers. And then when you expand that a bit further to include those also working on storage, we're looking at over 460,000 workers. And in 2024, we also saw that solar jobs grew in 33 states. And although the job gains were modest in most of those states, I think that's a really important takeaway because it shows how broadly solar employment extends. And it's also worth noting that 25 of those 33 states were states that voted Republican in the 2024 presidential election. So there's a clear indicator that the economic and employment benefits of solar are extending across the political spectrum. To better understand the significance of these findings, it's also helpful to look at them in the context of solar deployment. And you'll see at the top of the slide here, there were 50 gigawatts of solar capacity added in 2024, which was a 24% increase over the previous year, and the largest single year deployment on record. However, that did not translate to a comparable number of job increases. And what we saw is that solar employment remained essentially flat between 2023 and 2024, adding just 672 net new jobs. And for comparison, and I'll get into this a little bit more in a later slide, 2023 was also a banner year for the industry. 40 gigawatts were added that year. It was a more significant percentage increase. It was a 76% increase year over year, but it equated to a 6% increase in jobs. So a lot of that, as we'll talk about shortly, has to do with how different market segments of the industry are performing. And one of the things that we'll talk about today is that residential, commercial, and community scale solar all saw downturns in 2024, whereas there were significant gains in the utility scale sector, which employs fewer people per megawatt of capacity installed. And the last kind of contextual note that I'll add here is, of course, this data is looking at 2024 because there is a 1-year lag in data collection. So it does not reflect the significant policy shifts that we saw at the federal level in 2025 for clean energy. But one of the things that we think is really important about this year's data is that it's going to provide us with a reliable baseline for understanding how those policy changes are impacting the workforce going forward. It'll give us something to compare against. Next slide, Pagan. All right. And this gives a little bit of the historical context that I was alluding to before. So we're zooming out to look at how solar employment has been changing over time at the national level since 2010, when the census was first published. This bright blue line, the lower one, shows workers spending the majority of their time on solar, and then the grayish blue line on the top shows a broader set of workers, which is anyone who's spending part of their time on solar related activities. And Pagan, if you'll click one more time, I have an animation that overlays the solar capacity data on top of that workforce information. And I think this is a helpful context to kind of understand some of the trends that we're seeing. So historically, there has been a little bit of a closer alignment between capacity growth and job growth. So from 2010 to 2016, you can see that those lines followed relatively closely. But that relationship has been growing weaker over time, culminating in the last couple of years. So in the 5-year period between 2019 and 2024, solar jobs grew by 12%, while installed solar capacity grew by 286%. So there's clearly productivity gains going on, and not the capacity that we're deploying is not necessarily translating to the same number of jobs. And as we talked about on the previous slide, you can see how significantly solar deployment increased from 2002 to 2022 to 2023. And if you look at that middle line, you can see that there was an increase in jobs, but it was not nearly as steep. And then if you look at from 2023 to 2024, we also had a pretty steep increase in deployment. But if you look at that middle line, the number of workers spending the majority of time on solar stayed essentially flat. If you look at the top line, which is the broader selection of workers spending part of their time on solar, there was a slight increase. But just to elaborate a little bit on this, part of this is due to the trend toward utility scale solar, but it also has a lot to do with labor efficiency in general. SEIA has estimated that labor efficiency has increased roughly 40% since 2020. And there's some other factors at play as well. So in the residential sector, which employs a lot more people per megawatt deployed, the median size of residential solar installations is growing. So that likely also contributes to efficiency gains. And then there's a lot of new technologies being deployed as well. Robotics and AI are also playing a role. So next slide, please, Pagan. All right. Here, I'm moving on to looking at some of the different market segments of the solar industry. And again, we're looking a little bit at some of the changes that we saw between 2023 and 2024. As I mentioned, we saw a big growth in utility scale solar in 2024. So here we are breaking down where the jobs are located within market segments in the industry. And as you can see, residential solar continues to dominate the industry in terms of the total number of people that are employed, but it's not quite as significant as it was in earlier years. You can see how utility scale solar increased its share. And those changes are pretty notable because they reflect broader market dynamics. And then if we move on to the next slide, Pagan, I have a little bit more info about how each of those segments performed. So as you can see, utility scale solar increased by 93% in terms of the total number of jobs in that sector. And that aligned with a 33% increase in capacity that was deployed in that sector. Utility scale solar benefited from strong developer pipelines, a number of long-term power purchase agreements, and also increasing demand from utilities and corporate buyers. Residential solar, in contrast, declined by 21%. And some of the factors that we believe are at play there are significantly higher interest rates, which are affecting customer financing, as well as some major policy changes in markets like California, which decreased solar compensation and saw a contraction in the market there. Commercial and community solar also saw declines. And again, that was also despite increases in overall deployment. And those sectors were likely impacted by some of the same factors, including high interest rates. But the bottom line is that it's very important to understand how things are performing across different sectors, because not every sector is the same in terms of total number of people being employed. Next slide, please, Pagan. We also look at the types of firms that are employing individuals. So what we mean here when we say sector, the census categorizes jobs by a company's primary area of focus. So not the individual tasks that an employee performs. So for example, if somebody works in sales at an installation and project development company, that would be counted as an installation and project development job. And as you can see here, a significant majority of the jobs in the industry in 2024 were in the installation and project development sector. Operations and maintenance grew by about 2%, which makes sense given that the overall installed capacity of solar is growing, meaning that there's more need for long-term servicing and support. Wholesale trade and distribution, which includes companies providing services like logistics and warehousing, also saw growth, a little bit stronger at about 4%. And then manufacturing, which employs 12% of the industry, stayed relatively flat compared to the prior year. And with that, I'm going to hand things back to Pagan, who's going to cover some of our other sector-specific and demographic findings from the census. Thanks, Pagan.
Thank you, Gwen. So continuing on with our deeper dive into the solar job census, clean energy storage continues to be a major growth area for both deployment and jobs, and it is increasingly intertwined with the solar workforce. The number of workers in clean storage occupations increased by almost 4,000 jobs in 2024, which is up about 4% year over year to reach approximately 93,000 workers employed in clean storage in 2024. I think that's supposed to say, which is an increase of almost 4,000 jobs compared to 2023. Zooming out, that growth is part of a longer trend. So between 2019 and 2024, the clean storage sector added almost 14,000 net jobs, representing a 17% growth over that 5-year period. And the job growth, again, it closely tracks with what we're seeing on the deployment side. So in 2024, there was a 12.3 gigawatts of energy storage installed, which is up 33% over 2023. And most of that growth, again, was in the utility scale sector, but we're also seeing momentum in residential storage with 1.3 gigawatts installed in 2024, which is a 57% increase over the previous year. And then kind of more importantly, when we look at the broader workforce picture, over 464,000 workers spent at least some of their time on solar or energy storage in 2024, which just reinforces how linked these markets and occupations are as solar plus storage continues to scale. On the union side of things, in 2024, the proportion of solar workers that were represented by a union or a collective bargaining agreement or project labor agreement was 12%, which is a slight decrease from 2023, where it was 13%. So overall union representation in the solar industry remained pretty stable. What is especially notable here is what we're seeing in new hiring. So across all new hires, 6% were represented by a union. And in the installation and project development sector, the share of new hires represented by a union bargaining agreement or labor agreement increased from 2% in 2023 to 6% in 2024. And we see a similar increase in manufacturing with a 3-point jump there in new hire representation. So taken together, these trends reinforce that union representation does continue to be a really important part of job quality in the solar space, and that clean energy has an opportunity to support more high quality family sustaining jobs as the industry grows. We also took a deeper look into some of the demographics. So demographics in 2024 largely remain consistent with previous years, and they point both to progress and also to some clear gaps. So women comprise 29% of the solar workforce, underscoring what I would say is a longstanding kind of gender gap, although definitely significant improvements made in that space since I started working in this industry 28 years ago. For context here, women make up 26% of the overall energy workforce and 47% of the total U.S. workforce. So some opportunities to make some differences there. Representation also varies by race and ethnicity. Black workers are 8% of the solar workforce, which trails the overall U.S. workforce at about 13% Black or African American. And at the same time, Hispanic or Latino representation in solar is higher than the national workforce, and Asian representation is also higher than the national baseline. Solar continues to show comparatively strong veteran representation. 8% of the solar workforce are veterans, compared with about 5% nationally. And this reflects solar industry's longstanding recognition that veterans are really strong candidates for both entry level and more advanced and leadership roles. There's also, we also see some gaps in disability representation. People with disabilities represent about 2% of the solar workforce, which is compared to about 5% nationally. And formerly incarcerated workers make up about 2% of the solar workforce, which is consistent with the national workforce. And then finally, not outlined on here, but I think it's really worth highlighting, is that the solar workforce skews younger in general. So 31% of workers are under age 30, compared with 22 across the U.S. workforce overall. And I think also Workers age 30 to 54 represent 54% of the solar workforce, which is about the same as the overall workforce. And taken together, these data reinforce why inclusive recruitment, retention, and advancement strategies remain essential as the industry continues to grow. And I think even more importantly, as we reach some retirement cliffs in some of the trade spaces, which are so critical to advancing this work. I want to take a moment to let you all know that the 16th annual Solar Jobs Census is underway, and participation from employers is truly critical. So if you or organizations in your network employ solar or storage workers, we strongly encourage you to respond to the survey. The QR code will take you directly there. And this will not be the first time that you hear from IREC regarding participating in the next Solar Job Census. We're also actively seeking sponsors to help us continue census work and helps make sure that this data stays free, credible, and widely available. And that concludes the feature presentation section of our Alliance webinar today. And we're now going to transition to some updates from Alliance members, where they will show how they're using workforce data tools and partnerships to advance clean energy workforce strategies across the country. I am very pleased to turn it over to Rajat from the World Resources Institute Polsky Center for Global Energy Transition. Rajat is a research associate at WRI and will share some updates about their work at the intersection of clean energy workforce and economic transition. So Rajat, over to you, and we'll jump on to your next slide for you.
Thank you so much, Pagan. Hello, everyone. Really pleased to be here and speak to you all today. Hope everyone is doing well. I'm Rajat Shrestha, Research Associate at the World Resources Institute, or we're known as WRI. At WRI, I'm part of the U.S. Energy team within WRI's Polsky Center for the Global Energy Transition. I focus mainly on conducting data analysis on different projects, looking at the associated economic and workforce impacts of the clean energy transition. And today, I'm gonna provide you all a brief overview of WRI, then share a few highlights and insights from a recent analysis of the U.S. Energy and Employment Report. Next slide, please. So just in terms of a brief overview of WRI, WRI is a global research organization working to improve people's lives, protect nature, and halt climate change. Many of our projects focus or work at the intersection of people, nature, and climate. Within WRI, the mission of the Polsky Center for the Global Energy Transition is to bring together analytical power and expertise to help orchestrate the transition to a clean, affordable, abundant, and reliable energy future. And as you can see here, the Polsky Center for the Global Energy Transition focuses on 7 core areas, among which workforce development is one of our key priorities. And we're focusing on preparing the workforce for the energy transition and building a skilled and future-ready clean energy workforce as one of our core priorities. WRI has been working closely with BW Research, including Nate, from whom you'll hear more a bit later, on projects that look into and evaluate the potential economic and workforce implications of the clean energy transition. And like many of you all in the call today, our team looks forward to the release of the U.S. Energy and Employment Report annually. And we recently did an analysis looking at some clean energy employment trends based off the most recent user report. And I'm going to share some insights and highlights, which hopefully you'll find interesting. Next slide, please. Uh, The U.S. Energy and Employment Report covers all energy-related employment in the country, but our recent analysis focused on clean energy employment and trends within different clean energy sectors. The clean energy economy in the country has now become a major source of new jobs and is becoming an important part of the economy overall. Clean energy jobs, as you can see here, grew by nearly 12% between 2021 and 2024, growing from 3.2 million workers in 2021 to a total of 3.6 million in 2024. During the same period, compared to a 12% growth in employment in clean energy, the US overall job market grew by 8%. Across the country now, 22 out of every 1,000 workers are employed in clean energy sectors, and multiple sectors over this time period have seen positive gains in employment opportunities. Next slide, please. Here we have a general breakdown of where the 3.6 million workers in clean energy are employed in the country in terms of different sectors. As you can see here, energy efficiency, which includes different occupations like energy auditors as well as HVAC technicians, led the way in terms of the sector with a high concentration of clean energy jobs. Energy efficiency is followed by other sectors such as renewable power generation, clean vehicles, and clean transmission and distribution and storage. Next slide, please. Beyond the sector level breakdown of where clean energy employment stands, we also looked at where across the country clean energy jobs are and sort of different geographic trends as shown by the three maps here. And as you can see, there is a broad demand for clean energy workers across the country in politically diverse counties, states, and areas. Clean energy jobs can be found everywhere across the country, though their number, concentration, and growth trends over recent years vary as shown by the different maps here. In terms of absolute job numbers, which is shown here on the map in the left, states like California, Texas, New York, and Florida, among others, are where most clean energy workers in the country are currently. We also found that states in the West, in particular, have the highest proportion of clean energy workers in the broader economy, making up about 3% of that region's total workforce, which is shown in the map at the center. In contrast to states in the West, the South and states in this region has a lower share of clean energy jobs as a share of their total workforce. And finally, as you can see in the map on the right, clean energy has been a source of job creation across all four regions and different parts of the country. Southern states in particular have experienced the highest growth in terms of employment numbers, with a 13% increase between 2021 and 2024. Next slide, please. Uh, while we all know that the past few years we've seen notable growth and momentum in different parts of the US clean energy economy, I'm sure, as you all know, significant changes have taken place this year. And these changes have the potential to create roadblocks in the clean energy transition moving forward. While many of us are hoping that these are shorter-term roadblocks that may slow the momentum in the transition, a lot is still at stake. As you can see here, based on Rhodium Group's Clean Investment Monitor data, as of September this year, 110 clean energy projects representing about 36 billion in announced investments were canceled. Such cancellations could have significant impacts going forward in terms of lost employment opportunities, with states in the South in particular having high stakes compared to other parts of the country due to recent political changes. Next slide, please. And as sort of like a final point to wrap up my presentation, I wanted to touch on areas where my team at WRI are very keen on in terms of further research and analysis. As you can see here, fossil fuel-based and conventional energy sectors still employ thousands of American workers of different backgrounds, and the clean energy transition needs to be just and fair for everyone. If we believe that the clean energy transition is inevitable in the long run, uh, workforce and given workforce development planning efforts take time, then the issue of a fair and just transition becomes very critical for us. Fossil fuel jobs are an important part of the energy economy in many states. If you look at states like Texas as an example, it has the highest number of clean energy jobs after California, but clean energy jobs in Texas make up less than a third of Texas total energy employment, with the remainder being in fossil fuel-based industries. Uh, Even within different states like Texas, fossil fuel industry jobs tend to be concentrated in specific locations, which points the need to think about locally tailored and place-based policy interventions, including addressing training needs depending on different geographical and historical contexts, in order to further the agenda for fair and just transition moving forward. With that, I'll end my brief presentation here and want to thank you all for listening, and also take this moment to thank Pagan and IREC for allowing me to join and present some of what me and my team at W have been working on. And with that, I think I'm passing it on to the next presenter.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rajat. It's been great to have you join us. Next, we're going to be joined by Vanessa Grisco, who's going to share an update from Inclusive Economics. Vanessa previously served as Chief of Staff for the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Energy Jobs, and she'll be sharing some insights from work that she has done tracking trends in U.S. energy employment and what that kind of means for workforce strategy moving forward. And Vanessa, I appreciate you being with us today.
Thanks so much. And sorry, camera's still not working. That's okay. We'll concentrate on the content instead, which is far more important than myself. So thanks again for the introduction, and thanks for having me here. I'm Vanessa Grisco with Inclusive Economics. Together with Bethany Jones, we're former DOE staffers, having led the Office of Energy Jobs, and we're now a small research and advisory consulting firm working at the intersection of climate and labor. So in addition to the UCR supplemental report, we're also working on a review of solar projects using the National Tri-Trade Solar Agreement. And we'd love to hear from developers and contractors about their experience in working with labor unions on solar projects. So I'll drop our email in the chat. So if folks are interested, we'd love for you to reach out. But for today, I'm really here to talk to you about a brief overview of our supplemental report. So both Bethany and I worked on last year's DOE UCR report, and when they released this year, while it was a really fantastic snapshot, we did notice that they didn't include some of the year-over-year comparisons or callouts for clean energy jobs like it did in the past. And those comparisons can really help us to quantify trends, as well as provide those high-level key points about energy employment that make it really easy to take to stakeholders. So let's go ahead and dive in. Over to the next slide, please. So our biggest takeaway here, once we dove into the data, energy jobs growing by over 100,000 in 2024, 87,000 of those being clean energy jobs. So clean energy jobs grew at twice the rate of the overall economy. And now that brings energy jobs as a total to 8.5 million workers in the United States, 44% of those being in clean energy. We also found that 1 out of 3 jobs gained were union jobs, which brings the rate of unionization amongst energy jobs to an 11.7%, which is nearly double the private sector, which sits at a 6%. It is important to note, though, that while energy jobs did indeed grow in 2024, it did slow down compared to 2023, which grew at a 3%. I'm sure there's reasons and ideas for why that slowdown happened, but I'm going to go ahead and jump into sector data for now. So next slide, please. Here's a really quick breakdown of the UCR data broken into the 5 technology sectors as well as the 9 industries, construction and manufacturing being the bulk of the jobs. Our report has several breakdowns of jobs by industry, and we did find that 86% of the net new energy jobs were in the construction industry, 60% of new clean energy jobs being also in construction. Next slide, please. So energy efficiency saw the highest absolute gain at 4%, and this was also the only sector that experienced greater growth than 2023. Energy efficiency last year grew at a 3.4%. And the gain of jobs was mostly driven by construction as well as wholesale trade. Now, some sectors in energy efficiency saw especially high growth, like Energy Star certified data center equipment, as well as heat pumps, nearly doubling. Now, traditional HVAC goods still represents the largest portion of the energy efficiency sector, as well as added the most jobs. But the biggest takeaway here in 2024 was that all technology subsectors of energy efficiency did grow, which shows a really strong demand for energy and water-saving technologies by consumers. Let's go ahead and move on to TDS. All right, thanks. Transmission, distribution, and storage experiencing 2.6% growth, driven mostly by construction jobs also. And this was a cooling compared to the rate of 3.8% in 2023. Jobs and storage experienced really strong growth. And while we did notice that gas, crude oil, refined petroleum categories experienced higher year-over-year growth, the majority of storage jobs are still battery storage, and 3 out of 4 new jobs gained in 2024 in the storage category were in battery storage. We can move on now to electric power generation. Growth rate here sitting at a 1.6%, also a slowdown from 2023, but we did note 63% of new EPG employment was in the clean energy technology sectors. Solar did see the largest gain out of all of the electric power generation subsectors. Solar and wind continue to represent the largest share of EPG jobs, and they did grow at above average rates, 1.6% and 1.3%, though I will note that this was lower than 2023, where solar and wind both grew at about 5%, even above 5%. Other EPG categories saw steady growth, including natural gas, traditional and low impact hydropower, geothermal and bioenergy, and the exception of nuclear energy here, which did fall a percentage point. Coal EPG did see the largest decrease, losing about 3,000 jobs. We can move on to fuels. Fuel employment nearly staying flat. Coal and onshore natural gas experienced losses in extraction jobs. But by contrast, we did see that offshore natural gas, onshore and offshore petroleum saw gains. Not listed here, renewable diesel fuels and nuclear fuels, which both saw job growth. Now, some fuel subsectors do see high levels of unionization, such as nuclear fuels at 17% and coal fuels at 10%. All right, last, but we can move over to the motor vehicle section. Motor vehicles still representing the largest share of what we consider as energy workers at 2.63 million. This is the only sector that experienced a decrease in employment, down 1.7%, with a loss of 44,000 jobs. Now, this is a huge contrast with 2023 when we saw motor vehicles growing at 2.8% and they had added 73,000 jobs. And with the loss of these jobs in motor vehicles also comes the loss of unionized jobs. And while job losses were experienced across all subsectors of motor vehicles, it was jobs related to internal combustion engine vehicles that declined 15% more than jobs related to electric vehicles. All right, we can move over to our demographic slide. I know that well, a lot of this was already touched on, so I'll try not to be redundant, but we're also still finding majority of energy jobs held by men as well as white workers, women remaining underrepresented, as well as Black and African American workers who saw declines across every energy sector. We did find Hispanic Latinos made up 51% of all new energy jobs, and there are some groups that do make up higher than average representation in energy jobs versus the national average, such as veterans, which did see their representation gain in 2024. And then we also noted that while the number of formerly incarcerated workers is still disproportionate in relation to the national workforce, it is worth noting that this demographic did grow 11.7% in the energy sector. That's an addition of 13,000 jobs. And I think it's really important to, sometimes people ask us, like, how can I use these reports? These are really great places to be like, okay, I'm going to tackle this gap. And so shout out here to the folks that are working on getting incarcerated or formerly incarcerated workers and returning citizens into these jobs. I know that there's a lot of programs out there doing so, especially in the solar sector. And so it is a really great benchmark to be able to see that growth over time. All right. Last thing I'll note here is the energy sector is younger than average, with the highest share of workers under the age of 30 and the lower share being above 55. Let's move on to unionization. Also a little bit redundant here, so I'll be quick. Solar unionization remaining stable is noted by Pagan, but we did find the unionization over an overall energy jobs did slightly increase from 2023, and that's sitting at nearly double the private sector average, which is really great. 34% of net new energy jobs were covered by collective bargaining agreements. Highest share of energy workers represented by a union are in energy efficiency and in TDS, as shown in the graph to the left. And to the right, you can see the breakdown of unionized jobs in the electric power generation. We're finding that 2/3 of union jobs in EPG are in clean energy. And you can see they're very tiny, but it is wind and solar that carry the majority of unionized jobs in electric power generation. All right, last slide for us. Our state by state, so similar to WRI, our report also features these state heat maps so that you can look from the state to the county level, in fact. And I'll, again, avoid being redundant, but I encourage folks to go look at those heat maps. We do have a few that show, where clean energy sector grew the most and the highest levels of employment by state, as well as the highest employment for, which subsector of electric power generation. And we did find that this really amounted to some interesting points, like, solar employing being one of the highest employers in Nebraska, which I found really interesting. The figure below shows top industry in state in terms of jobs, but we can also see that construction for the most part being the dominant industry in most states, while we do still find that manufacturing belt running through the Midwest. We found a lot of those were battery storage jobs, and a few states seeing the largest job shares in mining and extraction, as well as professional services. So I will stop there and happy to take any questions. We are certainly, when we left the DOE, we were obviously a little bit nervous as to what the future of the use year was going to look like. So very happy to have done this and to fill in some of those gaps. And, potentially we will have to do this again next year. So appreciate you guys having us on.
Thank you, Vanessa. It's been great to have you here. Let's hope we're all rejoining next year to see where we're at. I think I'm going to be curious to see how things land. Now I'm going to turn over to our final Alliance member update for today. With BW Research Partnership, we are joined by Nate Hunt, who is a research director, and we'll share highlights on how the data is being used and probably a little bit about where it comes from. We are gratefully appreciative of the work that you folks do. And over to you, Nate.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pagan. And thank you for the opportunity to be here. We at BW Research are really grateful to be participating in this webinar, and grateful for the many partners that make the broader work possible. Today, it's been really fantastic to see all the ways that different folks are digging into and visualizing the data that we've been able to collect. Next slide, please. So really quickly about BW Research, we are a team of 20 researchers, economists, policy experts, and data scientists. We specialize in quantifying the clean energy economy through surveys such as USEER, and identifying workforce and economic development opportunities and challenges within energy. We do this through survey work, through workforce needs assessments, financial and economic benefit modeling, cost benefit analyses, and also just broader strategy development to support energy deployment. Next slide, please. So today I want to talk a bit about kind of the history and timeline of the U.S. Energy and Employment Report that Rajat and Vanessa were diving into and doing a really, really thorough job, which we appreciate. But I want to talk a little bit about the history, the origin, and a little bit about where USEER is at now. It really kind of took a very early form in 2019 with BW Research developing a green economy report for California, but didn't really take a more kind of close to its final form until 2011 with Mass CEC really leading the way in developing the Green Jobs Report. And then in 2016, under Dave Foster's team at DOE, was really the first year that the U.S. Energy and Employment Report, USEER, as I'll keep calling it, was kind of finally taking its final form. And we're quite proud to announce that, next year, the 10th edition of this report will be released. So we're really excited to, continue to have this data for at least one more year. So the impetus for the USER was really to answer key questions about the energy economy that were not previously answerable. This is, how many workers are actively conducting activities that are related to the energy sector. As you're all probably likely aware, the Bureau of Labor Statistics provides some data on hundreds of industries in every state and in every county, but that data is not really filterable for energy-related activities for most industries. For some industries, but definitely not in a comprehensive way. In years past, there were some kind of arguments about, how to answer that problem. One potential, solution was to update industry codes to resolve that issue. But the issue wasn't really that we needed a new code for HVAC installers who are installing heat pumps compared to traditional HVAC systems, but really we needed a way to understand how existing jobs and existing companies were changing to meet market demand and new technologies. After all, most green jobs are really just jobs that we're already aware of, working with new and different technologies. So what USER really does is filters the already excellent data that's provided by Bureau of Labor Statistics to understand the propensity of energy activity within traditional industry codes. So what we do is we survey about 50,000 businesses each year on behalf of Department of Energy. And we use that survey data to then filter the existing Bureau of Labor Statistics data to estimate employment all the way to the really the county level across a range of key energy technologies and industries, which again, Rajat and Vanessa kindly walked us through. To put that 50,000 mark into perspective, a pretty reliable national political poll generally has 800 to 1,200 responses. So at 50,000, we're really providing a level of reliability and granularity of data that is otherwise really difficult to or impossible to achieve. Next slide, please. So all of the data is publicly available through Department of Energy, but the usefulness doesn't really end there. As we saw today, there's a lot of kind of outside or separate analyses that go on that can be layered on top of the public data. And that public data is used extensively by state and local governments, including state energy offices. Basically, anybody who wants to dive more deeply into unique energy industry characteristics and the needs of the workers and the employers and the policies that can support them. The reports that are generated often kind of look beyond employment as well, focusing on innovation and investment, workforce requirements, and other metrics. So really the USER data is a solid foundation that allows really a range of different stakeholders to build a really solid analysis upon. Next slide. And yeah, finally, I mean, this is just a map of where we at BW have been able to reference USER related work. Hopefully, between everybody who's on this call, we've all referenced USER data in pretty much all of these states. So hopefully, this map is fully colored in. But I did want to highlight that again, the public USER data serves as a critical baseline for really a range of energy, workforce, and economic development research. We've developed workforce needs assessments where some of the core foundational data is used, and we've done that in Massachusetts, Utah, New York, Delaware, California, Colorado, among others. But really, this list is, in practicality, the data is national and available at the county level, and so we hope and believe that the data is really widely used and applicable throughout the country. So I want to end just with a kind of final thanks. Many of you have been supportive of the USER's development across the years. We're grateful to each and every one of you who supported, cited, otherwise used the data. Again, it really warmed my heart a little bit to see the data used in various forms today. And we also want to thank the team at Department of Energy who continues to support the work. I will finally leave off by mentioning, I think it's been mentioned before, but the survey to provide this coming year of data is actually in the field at this moment. So if you've received that survey, if it's sitting in your inbox and you haven't clicked on it yet, please get that done in the next few days so that we can kind of continue to provide this data going forward. All right, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nate. This has been fabulous to hear from so many different groups that are using this data in different ways, and including from BW. I can confirm we have used data in every single state, because if you go to the Solar Jobs Census web pages on the IRECUSA.org website, you will find solar jobs state by state. So we've at least covered it in one specific focus area. That concludes our feature presentation and our Alliance member updates today, and highlights the range of ways that we are all using the USER data and what's happening in workforce all across the country in different sectors. And I now want to, just before we close, want to let you know about a few upcoming opportunities to stay engaged with the Alliance and also our broader clean energy workforce community. So our next National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance webinar will be in February 2026. The date is to be determined, so stay tuned. And then we also have two upcoming conference. Well, we have many conferences coming up in 2026, and we have two in particular, one in January, the National Community Action Partnership Management and Leadership Training Conference. I will be speaking there, and also the National Association of State Community Services Programs. Their winter training conference is in February, and we hope to see you at one or more of those events and events going into the rest of 2026. And with that, I want to thank you all for joining us today and for your engagement in the chat and in our Q&A. We will now take a look at those QA questions just to see if there's anything that's come in that hasn't been answered. So Gwen.
Thanks, Megan. We don't have a ton of questions so far, so hopefully that means we all did a great job sharing the data in a clear way. Please feel free to add additional questions in the Q&A tab if you have some. But the main question that we got that I don't think has been answered yet is essentially what kind of workforce development programs do your organizations provide? And I think this individual is particularly interested in resources for employers. So Pagan, do you want to talk a little bit about how IREC supports employers, and we can open the floor to our colleagues as well?
Yeah, so I mentioned Green Workforce Connect earlier, and that is really kind of IREC's one-stop platform where you can find current workforce development supports, resources, and tools. And I think if I go, can you see I've switched my screen from the slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is Green Workforce Connect, greenworkforceconnect.org. If you go to the resource hub, you can filter by different types of resources that you might be looking for. So for example, if you are interested in information about apprenticeship programs, you can find our apprenticeship program resources and supports there. If you were, say, a contractor looking for business development supports, you can filter for contractor resources. Excuse me. We also have a really extensive listing of IREC workforce strategies and programs on our main IREC site under the Building the Workforce section, and under the Workforce Development Strategies there, you can find information, Green Workforce Connect, of course, trying to put everything into one place and make it simple. You can find links to the career maps, information about clean energy apprenticeships, information about the National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance, training and credentialing, and much, much more. And there's also information about a core program that IREC led for many, many years, our Solar Ready Vets program, which has just ended, but there is a lot of information and resources available to support development of veteran pathways. And I noticed one other question, Gwen, related to training program access and availability, I think. So I did want to point out that folks can go to the main Connect Now map on Green Workforce Connect and select for training. And that will provide 248 organizations across the country that are providing in-person training. And absolutely, Solar Energy International is a close IREC partner and provides great opportunities for people to learn remotely, along with other partners as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Megan. Vanessa, Rajat, or Neat, do any of you have workforce programs that you want to highlight that might be of interest to our audience? And no pressure if not. I think that is all the questions that we've gotten so far. So we may be able to wrap up a little early and give people a few minutes back in their day.
Well, anybody that knows about work that I have done publicly knows that I always try and wrap up at least 5 minutes early, preferably 10 or 15, because there are so many of us that jump from call to call to call, and we all deserve to have a little bit of a break in between our meetings. So in closing, as a final note, I encourage you all to stay connected to the National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance. You can visit the Alliance webpage on the main IREC USA site to sign up for updates. And we also have a LinkedIn group, so we invite you to join that LinkedIn group. That's a great place to continue the conversation and make new connections with peers and ask any questions that might occur to you after the webinar. Thank you again for your time and the work that you are all doing to advance a strong, inclusive, clean energy workforce. And thank you again to our partners that joined us today. And with that, I think we can close the webinar with the final note that we will send out a copy of the recording and the slide deck. And please also stay tuned for a very brief survey related to 2026 Alliance planning that has some more questions beyond the poll questions that we asked today. And Chris, did you have a final note? No, you just
no.
Joining the team.
So much gratitude. Just joining the team, thanking you, Pagan, and Gwen, and my IREC staff, who are rock stars, and thrilled that we could now partner with so many great experts in the field and hopefully advance and advocate for continuation of both gathering of metrics and excellent training and credentialing for a clean energy workforce. We are all better and stronger together. So the whole purpose of the Alliance is to share and grow and thrive together. So thank you all for being here today. And thank you, Pagan, for leading the webinar.
Thank you all. And I will give a special shout out to somebody that nobody can probably tell how much work she is doing on the IREC team. That is Michelle Barrett, who makes sure that all of our webinars run smoothly and stay on track. And it's one of those invisible rules. So shout out to you, Michelle, for making all of this happen today. We appreciate you. And with that, thank you, everyone. And we hope to see you in February for the first National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance of 2026.